Hi, Mystery Recapped here. Today, I'm going to explain a comedy-drama movie called Patch Adams. Who guessed that based on the title and thumb? Spoilers ahead, watch out, and take care. The movie begins as a middle-aged man named Hunter Patch Adams sits in a bus while being deep in his thoughts. At some point in his life, Patch found himself to be small, useless, and tired of this journey called life. He developed suicidal thoughts and eventually admitted himself to the psychiatric ward of the Fairfax Hospital. Immediately upon arrival, Patch meets a variety of patients. There is an old man who keeps holding up his hand and asks people how many fingers they see. He gets incredibly upset when people give the right number, as if he was expecting a completely different answer. Then there is Patch's roommate Rudy, who keeps getting scared of imaginary squirrels. Hey, they're terrifying. On the other hand, the hospital's way of treatment also seems to be more focused on medication than getting to the root of the problem. This is evident when Patch tells the institution's psychologist about his childhood trauma caused by his father's death. He opens up emotionally, but the latter seems to focus on writing down notes more so than actually listening to the patient. Slowly, Patch starts to realize that here, he will not get the help he needs. He thus decides to take things into his own hands. He begins cracking jokes with other patients, even if it means making fun of their mental condition. Patch also goes to the old man who regularly asks other patients how many fingers they see. Turns out the old man is Arthur Mendelsohn, a brilliant inventor who also admitted himself to this institution a few years ago. Patch has a conversation with Arthur, and the latter teaches him to see beyond the conventional way of looking at a problem. That very night, Patch returns to his room, only to find Rudy having yet another delusional episode. He desperately wants to go to the bathroom, but thinks that there are hundreds of squirrels out to get him. Patch, inspired by his earlier conversation with Arthur, comes up with a brilliant plan to help his roommate. He pretends they are in a battlefield, fighting against an army of squirrels. Their mission is to reach the bathroom where these imaginary enemies can't follow. After playing this game for a while, he successfully takes Rudy to the bathroom. A few days later, Patch finally decides that he has had enough of this mental institution. For several years, he wandered from one job to the other, feeling like he never belonged anywhere. But now he is clear about what he wants to do: help patients who are suffering from all kinds of problems. 2 years later, Patch joins Virginia Medical University and becomes the oldest first-year student there. He shares his hostel dorm room with Mitch Roman, a brilliant prodigy who is single-mindedly obsessed with becoming a great doctor. It is obvious from their first meeting that Mitch greatly disapproves of Patch's apparent lack of seriousness. On the first day of classes, the university's principal, Dr. Walcott, greets the students with a ferocious speech. He points out that doctors are humans who have emotions like fear and fatigue. These emotions can cause them to make wrong decisions at crucial moments. Thus, Dr. Walcott promises to train the humanity out of each student so that they can become the perfect doctors. Everyone in the class seems to be impressed by this speech, except for Patch. He is busy looking at his classmate, a beautiful girl named Karen. During the break time, he tries to introduce himself to Karen, but she refuses to even greet him, pointing out that she is here to study and not make friends. Patch takes the rejection with a sense of humor, then immediately befriends a nerd classmate named Truman Schiff. The two of them later have a short conversation about the principal's speech earlier. Surprisingly, both Patch and Truman have the same outlook, albeit they express it in different ways. They hate the idea that doctors must be emotionless machines and not empathetic individuals. Moreover, Patch also wants to work closely with patients instead of simply rot learning from books. He is fully aware that as a first-year student, he is not allowed to go on ward visits. Despite this, he grabs a white coat and sneaks in with a group of third-year students who are on a hospital round. He sees how doctors refer to patients simply by their diseases. This eliminates any human connection and makes patients simply bodies to be treated. Patch also talks to some senior nurses who explicitly warn him not to go into room 305. The room belongs to Mr. Adams, who is suffering from terminal pancreatic cancer. Following this, Patch makes his way into the pediatric ward, where he sees several children quietly lying in their beds. Many of them have shaved heads, indicating that they are suffering from some form of cancer. He sees their sad faces and decides to cheer them up. Patch grabs a nearby pipette bulb and puts it over his nose, making him look like a clown. One by one, the children in the ward start getting amused by his antics. The whole room is soon filled with laughter, prompting a nurse to check what's happening. She eventually catches the first-year student fooling around in front of the patients. Following his antics in the pediatric ward, Patch is taken to the principal's office. Dr. Walcott then reminds him that first-year students are not supposed to have any kind of contact with the patients. When Patch tries to share his point of view, the principal strictly reminds him that he is the one who sets the rules. It is obvious that Dr. Walcott does not like Patch at all. On the other hand, Patch also continues to be a nuisance in the eyes of his classmates. This causes Mitch to hate him more, while Karen refuses to even be in the same study group as him. But Patch doesn't seem to care. He still wants to be a clown and make everyone laugh. This first-year student slowly becomes a loved character among the nurses and various patients in the hospital. A few days later, the results for the first semester tests are published. Karen searches the list for her name and notices she got a 79 percentile. To her utter shock, Patch, whom she had thought of as an idiot, is second in the entire class with 98 percentile. This changes her entire perspective, and she has a conversation with him for the first time. Now that her judgment isn't clouded by loathing, she realizes that Patch is in fact a good-natured man. He even makes her wear the pipette bulb on her nose, and eventually manages to get a laugh out of her. That night, Patch, Karen, and Truman visit the hospital's geriatric ward. There, they put a smile on an elderly gentleman's face by letting him shoot balloons using a toy gun. The old man expresses his gratitude, and then says that he wants to go on safari one more time before dying. Another patient, an old lady, says she always wanted to swim in a pool of spaghetti. All the patients spend the night talking about their wishes and childhood memories. Following this conversation-filled trip to the geriatric ward, the three first-year students return to their dorms. Truman soon heads his way, leaving the other two on their own. Patch takes this opportunity and admits to Karen that he has a crush on her. Although she doesn't mirror his emotions, she doesn't reject him outright either. In the following weeks, Patch continues to brighten up patients' days through his carefree antics. He tries his hand and enters room number 305, where the terminal cancer patient, Mr. Adams, is admitted. Patch sings Nina Simone's "Feeling Good," hoping it would lift his spirits. Unfortunately, Mr. Adams grabs the medical student's collar and tells him to get the hell out of his room. Patch's bad luck doesn't end there, as he is soon apprehended by Dr. Walcott. The principal makes it clear once more that no first-year student is to be seen anywhere near the hospital. He also says that someone had raised suspicions that Patch might have cheated in the first semester. Following this, Patch storms to his dorm room where he confronts Mitch. He knows it was his roommate who had raised the suspicion to the dean. Mitch not only admits it, but also doubles down on this ridiculous claim. He is obviously jealous of the fact that he gets less marks than Patch, despite working harder. Mitch points out that one has to be extremely professional and sometimes even mean to be a great doctor. In response, Patch calmly says that Mitch is a young man, which is why he thinks one has to be a prick to get things done. Despite the principal's warnings, Patch continues to visit the hospital in his free time. He even visits room 305 once more and manages to make Mr. Adams laugh, using a series of great puns. The nurses are more than delighted to see Mr. Adams, who used to be extremely irritated all the time, laughing for once. A few days later, Dr. Walcott announces that their university will be hosting a seminar for the Fellowship of the American College of Gynecologists. He chooses Patch to head the welcoming committee and tasks him with receiving the esteemed guests. When the seminar day finally arrives, Dr. Walcott and his guests are left stunned by the welcome they receive. Patch has set up a giant pair of paper legs on either side of the conference hall's door. This looks like a woman lying belly up and opening her legs. As if that wasn't enough, there is a cheeky banner on top of the door that reads, "Welcome, gynos, at your cervix." This remark doesn't sit well with Dr. Walcott, who later expels Patch from the university. However, the Dean of Medicine, Dr. J.P. Anderson, reinstates Patch shortly afterwards. It is certain that Patch's unorthodox methods have improved his patient's physical and mental health. Anderson nonetheless asks him not to visit the hospital too often and not antagonize his seniors. Unfortunately, this roller coaster day keeps on serving both good and bad news for Patch. First, he opens up about his past mental struggles with Karen. She embraces him for what he is, and the two eventually share a kiss. However, when Patch sneaks into the hospital at night, he is informed that Mr. Adams is suffering quite a lot. Patch rushes towards room 305, where Mr. Adams asks him to sing Nina Simone's "Feeling Good." He obliges, but before he can finish the song, Mr. Adams passes away. As the heartbroken Patch bumbles his way out of the room, he sees a lady screaming and crying at the reception. She is being asked to fill up a form before her extremely sick son can be admitted in the hospital. After seeing so much suffering throughout his time at the university, Patch decides to help the needy in his own way. He purchases 105 acres of land in West Virginia. With the help of Arthur Mendelsohn, he then prepares to establish an unorthodox clinic called Gesundheit Institute, where he wants to treat patients without medical insurance. Patch convinces Karen, Truman, and a few other friends to help him renovate an old cottage into a clinic. This will be based on the philosophy of treating patients with humor and compassion. After several weeks of hard work, the Gesundheit Institute finally opens its doors for patients of all sorts. One of these needy people is Lawrence Silver, the son of a local businessman. Karen, who had seen Lawrence back at their university hospital, knows that he has mental issues and frequently does self-harm. She reveals to Patch that she is getting some bad vibes off of him. However, the latter tells her to show the patient some compassion, and everything will eventually be alright. After this tiresome day of work at the new clinic, Patch and Karen sit down for a chat. From their conversation, it is revealed that she had suffered physical abuse as a kid. This is why she has always been apprehensive about men in her life. Patch is incredibly shaken and is brought to tears by this revelation. He comforts her and reassures her that she can overcome her pain by helping others. The two then spend the night together by sleeping on the same bed. The next morning, Truman informs the two lovers that their inventory of medicine is quickly running out. Patch decides to visit the university and sneak out some medicine until they can find a better way. While he is gone, Karen receives a distress call from Lawrence, saying he desperately needs someone to talk to. She is frightened to check on him all by herself. However, she decides to go as she wants to help patients in any way possible. When Karen eventually reaches Lawrence's mansion, she is struck by how huge it is. Lawrence, on the other hand, has a strange, zoned-out look in his eyes. He initially behaves politely with her, but soon something strange happens to him. In a shocking twist of events, he shoots Karen with his shotgun. Then, Lawrence unalives himself by putting a bullet through his own head. A few hours later, this news reaches Patch, who is still at the university. He is devastated by the turn of events, and his entire worldview comes crashing down. Karen had told him that she'd gotten bad vibes off of Lawrence, but Patch had convinced her to see the positive side of things and deal with the mentally ill patient. She is now dead, and he cannot help but blame himself for this tragedy. In the aftermath of his lover's murder, Patch climbs a cliff on the edge of his West Virginia property and contemplates ending his life. He now doubts the goodness in humanity and asks God for an explanation for all these horrible incidents. Right on cue, his eyes fall on a butterfly, which lands on his medical bag before flying away. This reminds him of a conversation he had with Karen a few days ago. She had equated herself with a caterpillar, hoping that one day she could fly like a butterfly. Patch takes this as a divine signal and decides not to end his life. Following this, Patch returns to his university, determined to help patients in Karen's memory. Things, however, take a turn for the worse one more time. As people begin to look into Karen's death, Dr. Walcott eventually discovers the existence of Gesundheit Institute. This is a clinic which practices medicine, but none of the workers have a practicing license. Walcott uses this, along with Patch's clownish behavior in the hospital, as an excuse to expel him once more. Rather surprisingly, Mitch comes to his roommate's rescue and suggests he appeal to the state medical board. A few days later, a massive delegation, headed by the Dean of Medicine, J.P. Anderson, listens to Patch's case in the university's hall. He admits that he has opened a clinic, but also points out that he doesn't offer medical services. His clinic is a place where the sick and needy come to talk about their problems. Patch and his team make sure that these patients feel heard and go back with a lighter heart. He also encourages the crowd of medical students to treat patients with dignity and sometimes even humor. This impassioned speech, along with his good behavior with the patients and top-of-the-class grades, are enough to revert Patch's suspension. The board eventually allows him to graduate, despite not agreeing with all of his methods. In the final scene of the movie, Patch receives his graduation degree. However, in classic clown behavior, he bows to the professors and audience, revealing himself to be naked underneath his cap and gown. I'd like to dedicate this recap to the memory of Robin Williams, who is one of the most caring and hilarious public figures in history. Subscribe for more videos like this, turn on notifications, and leave a like to help the channel out. Thank you for watching.